In the enchanted realm of the Feywild, evil has taken hold. Inside a massive hollow tree in the heart of the forest, a powerful lich has made his lair. His dark influence radiates from his imposing hideout, corrupting the surrounding wilderness. You, brave adventurers, must find the lich and defeat him before it is too late. In this video, I'm teaming up with 4 other amazing crafters: Jay's Tabletop, Art Jeremiah, The Crazy Crafter, and Wylock's Armory, and we are building
the ultimate D&D dungeon.
The adventure is split into 5 stages, with each one of us tackling a different part of the adventure. To experience this adventure in full, make sure to check out each one of our builds. In addition, you can download the free module and run this adventure at home with your own gaming group. I was given the task of creating the final encounter, an epic confrontation in the Lich's inner sanctum, the subterranean chamber beneath the giant tree. What other perils lie in store? Join me on this crafting journey to find out. This project started as many other great projects have started before, with a trip to Home Depot to get some supplies. I found a suitable base for this project, a sturdy wooden disc in the lumber aisle. I bring that home and I start building the basic structure of my subterranean cavern. I start with some crescent-shaped pieces of foam. These are cut from offcuts and shaped with a handheld hot wire foam cutter. This and any other materials I use in this video will be linked in the description below if you want to buy your own. My original intention was to build on the base, but I decided I wanted some extra space, and I started building around the outside of the base instead. This would come back to haunt me later, but for now, I glued everything in place with Gorilla Glue construction adhesive. Once that was dry, I added more layers, corbelling inward with each successive layer. This is going to give my build the cavernous subterranean feel that I want. The front was left open, as if you're viewing the piece in cross-section. This will allow all the player's models and objects to be easily viewable and accessible. Once I have a few layers built up, I'm going to use some bamboo cocktail skewers to stab through the layers of foam and add reinforcement and rigidity. I stab them in on several angles and then trim off any protruding bits of skewer left over. With that done, I begin carving the shape of the cavern, again using a handheld hot wire cutter. This will help reduce the blockiness of the corbel pattern and provide a more organic shape. I add another layer on top for some more height, and then cut a removable lid-like piece to sit on top, completing the concave shape of the space below. Next, I cut a few islands out of various thicknesses of foam and place them inside my cave. I want some variation of the topography inside, because this will look and feel more interesting. With my basic shapes laid out, I prepare a mix of acrylic caulking, paint, tile grout, and sand. This mixture will give the exposed foam walls durability, texture, and the appearance of exposed earth. It also looks a lot like a chocolate sundae. I apply this to all the walls, wearing a pair of nitrile gloves so I can really give it a good rub down. My wife is pregnant, so I've been practicing my massage skills, so this was a piece of cake. It also looks like a literal piece of chocolate cake. I pay extra attention to the cracks on the inside along the base, doing my best to seal them up. As you'll see shortly, this seal will be important in future steps. With the earth mixture applied, it's beginning to look vaguely like an underground chamber. Now is the time to create the roots of the tree above. I use heavy-duty aluminum foil to create the roots themselves, branching them off in root-like patterns. Some of these roots I glue to the walls. For the roots that will protrude away from the walls, I use Sculptor armature wire to reinforce the insides. To create 2 massive bundles of roots that flank the opening chamber, I wrap some pieces of foam in the foil to get some extra bulk. To cover and seal the tinfoil and add more texture, I make a mix of paint, Mod Podge, grout, and water. I've never done this before, and I wasn't sure what to expect, but it worked out pretty well. Once 2 coats of this were dry, I wanted to make some creepy deep water, so I painted the lowest level black, then gradually added green to the center. I I did a brown wash and a light gray dry brush to pick out some details. When I was happy with the result, I mixed up some 2-part epoxy resin, colored it with some paint, and then poured it in. The resin is self-leveling, but I pushed it around with a heat gun to pop any little bubbles that might have formed in the mixing process. There was a small leak, so obviously I didn't seal it well enough in previous steps. Luckily it didn't leak much. While the resin was drying, I began printing up some of the lich's minions. This session was brainstormed on a live stream, and one of the suggestions was myconids, or mushroom people who live in the deepest, darkest places of the world. I 3D printed an assortment of myconids, then began painting them with contrast paints. I started with the lightest colors for the bodies, then picked out a variety of shades for the caps. I finished them by basing them with a mix of foam flocks and some blue lichen, to give them a hint of Feywild and a splash of contrasting color. By the way, if you like this video, I do have a Patreon page. Just throwing it out there. The lich is also a collector of various Feywild species and keeps them in vivariums around his chamber. I made these from vending machine toy capsules to represent a magical field of containment, and then tied them in with some roots made the same way as his previous steps. I imagine the roots have grown up around the vivariums, securing them at the lich's command. To provide an interesting light source, I decided to model some glowing things trapped inside the vivariums. These could be fairies, a rare fungus, or whatever you like. I started by taking the back off an LED tea light, popping out the apparatus inside. As you can see, the LED is bright and casts a bright point of focused light. To diffuse the light and add color, I apply hot glue to the LED, rotating the wet glue like a glass blower so it doesn't droop off. Then I gently dip the LED into water to harden the glue. This probably goes without saying, but do not submerge the entire tea light. I apply yellow contrast paint to the dried glue, then apply more glue, more contrast paint, and more glue in several layers. In the end, I get an interesting organic looking glowing bulb that diffuses the light nicely. As a final step, I paint the lower part like the surrounding roots to make it blend in somewhat. It will barely be visible inside the vivarium, so I'm not too concerned with the appearance beyond covering the bright white plastic. To add some fungus to the lich's lair, I'm going to make a small stand of mushrooms. I start with a length of wire, twisting it into position to make the shape of the stems. Next, I add some Sculpey, forming a base and bulking out the stems. I then form a bunch of caps of various sizes. I bake these hard, lay them out in order of size, and start gluing them on. I use hot glue, using the classic Y-lock technique of sculpting the hot glue with the nozzle to get some rough rib detail on the underside of the mushrooms. That's it! I paint them in a similar fashion to the myconids and call it done. The final detail of the project is a pile of acorns, one of which might be the lich's phylactery. I make this by pressing some tinfoil into a pile shape, covering it with tacky glue, and then pouring on some chia seeds that I think my wife bought for smoothies or something. Acorns at this scale would be tiny, and these are close enough. I paint them brown, and that's all she wrote. The lich's lair is complete. This project has been an absolute blast. Make sure to go check out the other projects in the series, starting with Jay's Tabletop over on Instagram. Huge thank you to my patrons for being real ones, you guys are the best. There's only one thing left, and that's to play this quest for myself. I can't wait. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next time on Eric's Hobby Workshop.